likes attention. I know right now, hopefully, I'm the center of attention in this room, and I won't lie, I don't hate it. And I bet most of us here, whether it's the little nods of acknowledgement or the grand gestures, we all appreciate and crave attention. We use the word attention quite often in our daily lives. We hear our favorite singers like Justin Bieber, Charlie Puth, and New Jeans sing songs of attention, often in the context of a love song. However, beyond our love melodies, what does attention truly mean? And what transformative power does it hold? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nase. You can also call me Jessica. I'm a fourth-year psychology specialist, criminology major, and education minor at the University of Toronto. But beyond my academics, over the past many years, I've had the amazing opportunities to work with and teach children from various different cultures and backgrounds across Canada, as well as travel to many places around the world, like South Africa and South Korea, to work and teach children over there. Specifically, after my second year of my undergraduate studies, I decided to take a gap year and earn my teaching English as a foreign language certificate to go to my parents' hometown, South Korea, and teach elementary school English for a full-time year. So drawing from my different experiences, today I invite you all to embark on a journey with me to explore what attention truly means and what transformative power it holds. I'll mainly be talking about attention in the context of a classroom today. I want to explore the question of not how educators can grasp the attention of the students, but instead, I want to explore the question of how educators can provide sufficient attention to their students to cultivate better learning. From infancy all the way to adulthood, our need for attention remains a constant force that shapes the trajectories of our individual and collective journeys. In the realm of psychology, we often define attention as a state of consciousness in which a person responds to a stimulus, which is something that elicits a certain response or behavior. But in simpler terms, attention is when concentration is given to something or someone interesting and/or important. So in the context of a classroom, it is often the students who require attention. Why is attention so important for students in a classroom? Well, institutions and educators play a pivotal role in shaping a student's learning experience. I'm sure most of us here can recall at least one or two teachers from post-secondary or even all the way back to preschool who has left an impact on your education. Just like those teachers have left a mark on you, the quality of attention that teachers give to their students academically, emotionally, and socially lays the foundation for their overall well-being, as well as their future interactions with the world. Many students often view their schools as their second homes, and that's because they spend most of their weekdays there. And for some, they actually view their schools as their only safe home. One thing I've learned after teaching students in various different contexts is that students bring diversity into a classroom, and that includes both the negative and the positives. So the concept of attention in a classroom addresses this diversity. It addresses the different learning paces, learning needs, and so forth. When teachers dedicate attention to their students, it not only identifies their diverse talents and strengths, but studies have shown that it minimizes their distractions, increases engagement, and sparks curiosity. So attention has the potential to prevent negative behaviors in a classroom and in place, welcome positive and safe learning. Allow me to share with you a story at this time that actually fueled my inspiration for this very talk today. In the year 2022, I had a 7-year-old student. Let's call him John for the sake of this story. John was what many would consider the troublemaker or the problem child. Here's a screenshot I took of my screen during one of my classes that was moved online because of the pandemic. I was showing my textbook, and my lovely student John was drawing all over it. And despite my many attempts to try and stop and control John's behavior, it was useless. And so one day I decided to give John's mother a call. Maybe she had a better solution than I did. And before I could even get into the details, John's mother already knew what I was going to talk about. And then she proceeded to tell me what was happening in John's household. It turns out that John's parents were going through a complicated divorce, and John's older sister was battling severe depression. And because of these reasons, John's mother felt that John was not getting the sufficient attention he needed at his age for proper development. And that's when it hit me. Perhaps John's desperate need for attention was manifesting through these disruptive behaviors that were showing up not only at his home and my class. So as John's teacher, I consciously chose to do two things in response. Number one, teach him. I didn't really have a choice because that was my job at the time. But secondly, I wanted to find ways to simultaneously give John some of the attention he perhaps needed. How did I do this? Well, I thought the first step that I needed to take was to speak his language, get on common ground with him, because that's how I can create a bond with him where he feels like he is getting some attention. There's one thing I knew about John, and that was he loved to draw, as we saw earlier. And so one day for his class, I told everyone to pull out their notebooks and draw a big capital A on a blank page. And then I asked my students, because we were learning the basic alphabet and phonics at the time, to transform their capital A into their favorite animals. I knew John was going to draw a dinosaur because he loved dinosaurs. So here's how an A can be transformed into a dinosaur. You can draw little feet, a nice tail, and a nice little head to finish it off. And by allowing John and his friends and his classmates to engage in this activity together, I realized that it opened the door for me to create a special bond with John that allowed me to actively listen to him and make sure he felt validated and ultimately attended to. But there was also something really interesting that was happening in my class. Not only was I creating a bond with John myself, I noticed that the students through this activity were creating bonds with each other. And through those bonds that they were creating through this engaging activity, they were giving each other attention. Now, I do want to highlight something very important, which is that redirection is not reinforcement. In no way was I rewarding John for his disruptive behaviors. Instead, I found ways to redirect them towards learning. I allowed John to continue his love for drawing in my class, but in ways that were appropriate to the classroom setting. And after about a month of implementing this activity, I realized that John's engagement significantly improved, as well as his disruptive behaviors were decreasing. So I gave John's mother a follow-up call just to see maybe he's a little different at home. And she told me that John's been very different at home. And I said, oh, how is she different? And John's mother told me that he's made mornings so much more easier for me. He's the first one up in the house and first one wanting to get out of the house to go to school. And he specifically said that he loved his English class. Inside I said, yes, because I'm his English teacher, so it's a big moment for me to hear that. And that's when, through John, I learned transformative power of attention. Something so simple like me creating a special bond with my student through his shared interest allowed me to rekindle his love for learning once again. However, realistically speaking, I know that this individualized attention that I gave to John in a classroom is not always the most practical and realistic, especially when you have 30 plus kids running around in a classroom and teacher burnout being at its utmost high these days. And I get it, I really do. I want to say I didn't implement this approach to all of my students. So instead, I propose a more general approach that involves tapping into the general shared interest of the class as a whole together. Many teachers have a mandatory curriculum they need to abide by the end of the day. However, many teachers also have a bit of leg room and flexibility in how they want to teach the curriculum. And that's where I believe attention can be integrated. Like I did with John, the first step is to understand the shared interests of the classroom as a whole. This can be easily done by simply talking with them. Ask them what they did on the weekend, what movies they like, what songs they're listening to these days, or even observing their t-shirts and backpacks, because for the younger age groups, oftentimes there's big characters on them. And by collecting these observations, teachers can tap into the general interest of the students in a way that attention can be redirected to make students feel they are attended for, that resonates on a personal level. Let me share an example of how I tried to implement this approach. So when I was teaching in Korea, I was given the mandatory curriculum goal to improve my students' overall speaking and pronunciation skills. Pretty straightforward. So I want an approach that used the students' shared interest to allow for attention and learning at the same time. Who here knows the song Let It Go from the Disney movie Frozen? I'm sure most of us do, and despite the song being over 10 years old, I know, time flies, it has been loved by many across the globe, and that did not exclude my students. Especially during the cold winter seasons, I would hear my students in different classes hum and sing the song as they came into my class. And then I listened a bit closer, and it turns out a lot of my students actually didn't know the lyrics to the song up to Let It Go. And maybe some knew up to Can't Hold It Back Anymore, but that's about it. And so I said, hey, that's a shared interest. What are ways I can use that to be a powerful learning tool in my class to reach this mandatory curriculum goal and give students some of the attention they may need? So one night I went online and I found a program called Language Reactor. Now, in no way am I affiliated with Language Reactor. It's just a free program anyone can embed onto their browser. And for streaming platforms like YouTube and Netflix, you can have these dual captions with the English subtitles as well as direct translation for whatever language. And after experimenting this tool, I thought it was perfect. And so I created a 4-step program that involved my students learning easy nursery rhymes to easy soundtracks, hard soundtracks up to short dialogues from child-friendly shows. And by allowing my students to all engage in this activity, the engagement level was booming, because who doesn't love singing as a whole? But not only was I able to see a significant increase in my students' speaking and pronunciation skills, I also noticed that a lot of my students' confidence skills increased, which is very important when learning a new language. It even compelled some of my students to participate in a national speech competition, which none of them wanted to participate in before because they were just not confident enough. But after implementing this program, more and more of my students wanted to participate in this program, and some of them even brought great prizes to represent our school. Here's a picture of me teaching the song Let It Go together, and by the end of each month, my goal was for every class, regardless of what level they are on or what step they are on, they would be able to present or sing a full song or dialogue in full without any aids. And they would also be able to explain what they are presenting. Now, although my Language Reactor program worked very well with my students in Korea, I do want to highlight that there is no one-size-fits-all approach in how to implement attention into a classroom. Let's say if I were to implement this in a class of refugee kids in Canada. I don't think it would have the same positive effects as it did to my students in Korea. And that's because, like I've shared, you have to understand the students' shared interests or their interests to be able to give them some of the attention they may need. So as my talk comes to a conclusion, I do hope that my 2 stories inspired you to become agents of change, to become catalysts that start this ripple effect of attention. Although I did talk about attention mainly in the context of a classroom, I do believe that the same concept can be applied to any other collective group. So if you were to take away one thing from my talk today, I do hope that it is, whether you're a teacher, a student, a parent, sibling, grandchild, or so forth, I'm sure one of those applied to you, that if you know of someone who needs a bit of attention, give them a text, give them a call, because perhaps you giving some attention to them may lead to a powerful transformation. Thank you for your attention.